All right, so in this video, we're going to look at a for of loop, which is a newer way to basically loop through iterable objects like arrays or even strings and maps and sets, which we haven't talked about yet. Not object literals. There's actually another loop called a for in that we're going to look at in the next video to show you how to loop through objects. But this is a cleaner way to loop through an array than a standard for loop or a while loop. So let me just create an array here. We'll just do items, and we'll put some random items in here. Let's say book, table, chair, and kite. And then I want to loop over these. Now, if you remember with a for loop, what we would do is we would initialize a variable here, set it to 0, and then we would do as long as I is less than whatever that array length, so items dot length, and then we would increment that I variable. And then if we want to access each specific item, we would have to do items and pass in the variable as the index. All right, now a cleaner way to do this is with for of. So instead of doing all this in here, we can simply do, I'm using const, but you can use let if you want. But we can simply say const and then give a variable name for each individual item, which I'll just call item, and then say of items. All right, and then in here, I don't need to do this because we can just simply access the item variable. If I save that and run it, we get the same result, and this is much cleaner and just much more modern looking. And if we wanted to have an array with objects in it, like let's say users, and we'll set that to, let's say, an array of objects, and we'll just give these a name. So we'll say name Brad, and a couple more here. I'll say Kate, and say Steve. All right, and then let's comment this out, and we'll say for, and we'll say for const user of users, and then I'll console log user. Okay, so now we have all of our objects. If I want to access a specific property, then I would do user dot and then whatever that property, in this case name. Now, my first choice for looping through arrays is to use the for each method, which is a high order array method that you can use on directly on arrays, but I think this is a better way to do it than using a standard for loop or a while loop or a do while loop or anything like that. So we can also use this to loop over strings. Okay, let me just put a comment up here, and we'll say loop through arrays. All right, now for strings, let's say const, and we'll just say str, and we'll set that to, let's say, hello world. And then if I want to loop over that, I can simply do for and then give a variable, let's just say letter, because that's what we're going to get is a letter, and then of our string. And then if we console log here letter and save, then you'll see it's going to loop through and it's going to output each letter of that string. Another thing you can do is loop over maps, which we haven't talked about yet. I'll get into this later on, but just to give you a quick example, we can create a map, a variable called map, and set it to a new map, not a nap, although I could use one of those, but we'll set it to a new map, and then we can add key value pairs. So I could do map.set, and we could set, let's say, name to John, and then I could set, let's do an age, so we'll say age 30, and if I wanted to loop through these, I could do a for of. So I would do const. Now we can get the key and the value by putting brackets in here and just saying key value of the map. And now if I console log here, I'll go ahead and log both the key and the value. And now you'll see down here both the key value pairs, name John and age 30. So you can use it to loop over maps as well. Pretty much any iterable object. Now there is another type of loop called for in that allows you to loop through object literal values which we'll talk about in the next video.